Okay, so hi guys, today I'll tell you about GitHub Actions. So what is a GitHub Action? GitHub Action is a CI/CD platform CI/CD is continuous integration and continuous delivery platform on which you can build, test, and deploy your projects or anything that you're working on directly to your production. How it does it automates your builds, testing, deployment, all the stages that a project go through. It automates everything using a pipeline, CI/CD pipeline, what is it is known as. Then in GitHub Actions, you create work. There are three main components in a GitHub Actions. The one is events, one is workflow, and the one is actions. Now the events are anything that you do in a GitHub or in your GitHub repository. Anything you do, such like push, pull, commit, merge, that you do is what are events. Then once you do these events, will trigger your workflow. Workflow is just uh, a configuration file in which you write all the things that has to be performed in steps, and you write down all the things that you want your pipeline to do in a specific order, and then it will be done. And after that, it is being deployed to your production or the production environment. Then after this, there comes actions. Then actions are just predefined. uh, the actions are what they are reusable codes. What are reusable codes? Supposedly you have to uh, enter your ID password again and again in your workflow. So there are predefined actions in which you enter your ID password for the first time, and every other time it will be automatically fetched from there. So that are what known as action. It helps you in such a way that you don't have to write your code again and again. Now these are the three main things that are there in a three main components of GitHub Actions. There are other so many factors on which GitHub works on. Okay, so now uh, let's have a brief about GitHub Actions. Now this is your in what happens. How does GitHub Action work? Is like you have anything in your code that is you have written, and you push your code in your push, pull, or anything that you define in your code is what will trigger your workflow. Now workflow is just a bit of a code or a bit of information that is written in sequence or steps or jobs, anything. So you have your workflow written which will perform all the tasks. Now there are other things that you have to that are there in GitHub Actions. Now what are they are? First of the thing is events that is uh, okay. So events will trigger your workflow. Now inside the workflow you have to specify so many things. Now let's come to those things, and let me show you a sample workflow in which I have specified so many things, and I'll tell you what are they. mm. so hmm okay. So firstly, how does a workflow? What is a workflow? So in your once you go to your repository in your GitHub, you'll see. And you go to GitHub. Okay, so you go to GitHub, and you go to any of your repositories. Supposedly, I want to go to your this repository. Now you could see there is a actions tab in your GitHub, and to make a CI/CD pipeline, you have to go to your actions tab, and you have to set up your workflow. Then GitHub provides so many sample workflow templates so that you don't have to start from the scratch. You could just start from like supposedly you want to deploy anything to your Amazon ECS. So there is a sample workflow template which you could use, and you could edit out all the things that you want according to your project. Now once you go to your workflows, you wanna go for a Terraform workflow. Now you search T double R. Now you could see Also you could see like I opened my Python repository, so they also provide suggest you with some random workflow that they think might help you. So all the workflow that they think, Python package and all these things that they think would be suitable for you. Supposedly now you want some different workflow. Let's go to my repository in which I have created a workflow. Now I'll go to my repositories, and supposedly this is my project. Now I go to actions. Now I have already created a workflow. Also the workflow which you create is in a specific folder. Now if you want to create it manually, you have to make a folder on .github. Inside that you have to make a folder of workflows, and inside that you have to make your workflow configuration file, which is in YAML. And you could create a workflow configuration file like that. Now these are the CI/CD pipeline, how it will look. Now there are various things supposedly such as runners. Now firstly let me show you a workflow file. Now you go to your code. Now there's this .github/workflows. Now you have to make this file, or once you configure the workflows which are there by default template, you could see this file will automatically be generated by you by GitHub. Now you go to this workflow and you go to this is my YAML file. Now in this I have written in the start, which is like name CI/CD name. Now you have to name your workflow. What name do you want your workflow to give? So right now here I have given Terraform CI/CD is what is this workflow name. Now that is how you start. You have to name your workflow. After that there is this thing, you could see these are the jobs. All these things here are jobs. Now when do you want your workflow to get triggered? So this is the event what we have added. The first thing which we want is to workflow to get triggered, the information when our workflow will get triggered. So now on push. Now on push is every time you push your code to your GitHub repository, in the branch is main. You could enter more branches if you want. So right now I added on main branch. Whenever anything is pushed to a main branch, then this workflow or this CI/CD pipeline will get triggered and it will run. Now jobs. After that you have to enter the jobs. Now jobs, in job, what are the jobs? Jobs are basically the steps which you write in a GitHub YAML script or GitHub CI/CD script, in which you write all the things that are basically you're performing in your GitHub. Supposedly you have written a code to like make AWS resources in your Terraform. Now you want, now in your CI/CD you let the pipeline or the workflow know that yes, I have written a code in Terraform and now I want to make resources. So you firstly tell them that here supposedly this is the Terraform code. So you let them know that these are my login ID, password, and this is, you have to set up your Terraform script, and then you provide them with the codes that which they have to perform to set up AWS resources on your AWS console. Now supposedly this is done. So now jobs. Now inside the jobs you give various steps to for your runner to perform. Now the runners are basically nothing but these runs on, you could see jobs. Now you could name this job as Docker image build and push that I have given. You could create as many jobs inside the job. You could create as many steps as you want to. Supposedly this job, in the first job I have created Docker image build and push. Now the name of the job is dev. Now what is this is, I have given the name. It is optional if you want or you don't want. Now this runs on Ubuntu latest is what is runner. Now runners, now now runners are basically a virtual environment. uh, okay, so runners are virtual environment in your GitHub. Now what are these? Supposedly you write jobs to uh, download Python. Your first step is to download Python. Second step is to run your Python script. Now what it will do is, and you have provided that it runs on Ubuntu. Now Ubuntu is the runner name. Now runners are basically the virtual environment or uh, platforms, independent independent virtual environment in which you perform your jobs and various steps. So now each step is performed in different runner, or independent runner. Supposedly your first job, now it is performed in this runner, then your second step, it is performed in this runner. So basically all these things are performed on runners. So runners are like, the GitHub provides various runners are just like, they provide runners are just independent containers which will provide you some CPU, which will provide you some RAM and some storage on which you could perform your task. Now now you have your first job. Now git also firstly GitHub provides various inbuilt runners which are like Ubuntu Linux, Windows, Microsoft Windows, and Mac OS. And yeah, these are the runners that GitHub provides. Now it doesn't mean that you have to perform. Now these are the runners which have some specific configurations that are predefined by GitHub, such as CPU. They provide 16 GB RAM and 4 GB vCPU, and these are supposedly the configuration file for Ubuntu that GitHub provide. Now you can't change these configuration because these are the configuration that GitHub has already defined. Now if you want to like make your own runner, that is also what you could do is, you could make your own runners. Okay. Hmm. Okay, so you could make your own runners and everything that you want. Now you go back to the okay. Now runners are basically three types: the GitHub provided runners, your own runners, and the large runners. Now supposedly you're working for your own personal projects and everything, then you could, the best way to work it out is using the GitHub provided runners, or the runners which are there itself in the GitHub. Now if you want to create your own runner, then you could do that as well. But then GitHub, the best recommended settings from the GitHub is also that you use the GitHub provided runner. Now there are large, now supposedly your project that you have is basically needs more CPU than the CPU that is provided by GitHub runners. Now what you could do is, you could go for the large runners. Now what are large runners is, large runners are basically the runners, supposedly you have the GitHub cloud platform plan. Now what it has is, it GitHub cloud platform plan is a plan in which you pay the GitHub some fees, and on the basis of that they provide you some runners. Now now there are various runners that GitHub will provide. Now GitHub will provide you on the basis of your requirement. Large runners are there. Supposedly in Ubuntu Linux, GitHub provides you 16 GB of RAM. Now you want 32 or more GB of RAM than 16, then you could go for large runners by using the GitHub cloud event plan. Now after that there comes, now these are the runners. These are just basically independent uh, virtual containers or independent virtual machines which will run your jobs, which on which your jobs will run, or in which all the steps will run. Now these are the jobs inside this. These are the things that you want your CI/CD pipeline to perform. So supposedly they want you to perform your Docker login on anything. So they want something, basically a Linux or anything, Linux, Windows, or Mac OS. So they want to know which device you want me to log into Docker. So there comes the runner. So you provided your CI/CD pipeline with runner. Now okay, so now I'll tell you about the other things. So this was the runner which I told you, that this is just a server that will run your workflow, that your workflow will run on. Now after that we comes our environment. Now what our environment is, environments are basically the different set of supposedly your project have three phases: testing, first is dev, second is test, and third is prod, production. So these three stages are the three environment of your project. So now if you have to make a CI/CD pipeline to automate all these three stages, then it will also be done in three different environment. One would be the dev environment, one would be the test environment, and third would be the prod environment. So in your GitHub Actions you could see, in here you could go and you could see the environments. So here you could make different environments for your CI/CD pipeline. So supposedly I have already made two environments, that is dev and docker. Now supposedly you want to make a environment, so you click on new environment, and then for the environment it's basically you could define your workflow according to your different environment, so that how once one of the environment is being once the workflow for one of the environment is finished, then the workflow for the next environment will automatically gets triggered and starts. So supposedly I want to make a test environment. Now I enter the name of test environment. Now these are the different things that you could set up in an environment. So the first thing that is that does it require reviewer. What it means is, supposedly you want to deploy your app to the production, and for that have the you want to merge your, firstly you will commit your code, or you will give a pull request to your main branch. Now once the pull request is accepted, then the CI/CD pipeline will run. Now in the CI/CD pipeline, once you want to deploy your any changes to the production, so required reviewers means, does it have to take any reviewers permission before sending it to the production or deployment, or to deploy before deploying it to the next environment? Does it have to take uh, any permission? So this is what, once you click on required reviewers, you can add as many as 6 reviewers or 6 group. So you could write here the name of the people that you want on your as your reviewer, and once the particular project or CI/CD pipeline reach this environment, they'll ask for the review before entering into the environment and going into the workflow of this environment. After that there is this wait timer. What it is it is just a timer, or a timer in which it will take a pause before entering into the next environment. For example, you write the timer x 1 minute. So what it will happen is, before entering the test environment, the project will take a 1 minute of gap, and then it will enter into the next environment, which is test. And also there are other things that you could see is environmental secrets. Now what are these is, once in your workflow you'll see, wait, I'll just go to the workflow, and inside the workflow you'll see there are many things that requires your supposedly you want your resources to be built on in AWS, so you need to have your access key and secret key to be known by GitHub. Then these keys will be stored in these environmental secrets. Now supposedly in your test environment, or the workflow says that log in into your AWS and make a, or log in into your Docker and make a Docker image and build it and push it to your, so this is your workflow for the test environment. So what would happen is, it will ask you for your Docker username and your password, so you can't enter those into the code. So that is why environmental secrets are made. So you could enter your environmental secret like your Docker username, and you could write your username here, and then you could add secret. And similarly you could add another secret as Docker password, as password Docker or anything, and then you could store your password. And then if you want your workflow to take access to this is, then the simply secrets dot your name, secrets dot docker username is how you will fetch the username from this environmental secret. Secondly, uh, this is how you'll make your environmental or any environment. Now once the environment is made, you could go here, you could see this is the test, this is the doc, and this is the dev. So in my docker, supposedly it's my first environment in my project, in which I have written docker username and docker password, in which in the I'll show you the workflow of my. Okay, so these environment are just basically different uh, staging or different stages in your project, which has to be passed uh, in your environment. Then you could see in this, you'll see there are different environments. So this is how a sample flowchart of your different environments will look like. This is your dev environment, this is your test environment, and this you could write, supposedly there are other environments that you want to make, then also you could make it like that. There could be as many environments as you want, and each environment you could even like, if you want all your environments to run simultaneously, you can do that as well. If you want your dev environment to run first, and then when it is finished, then you want your test environment to run, that can also be done in your workflow. Now going back to the workflow, I'll show you. Now you could see in your workflow, uh, uh, this is your workflow, this is your YAML script of CI/CD. In this you have written environment as a docker, which is my first environment or my dev environment. Okay, so I've given the name as dev environment and an environment, and I've saved it by the name of docker. Now these are the, now inside the job, this is the first step to set up your runner, to set up your environment, and to give the name. And after that, the steps comes into play. The steps are basically different actions or different commands that you want your project to run in your particular environment. So in firstly I enter into my dev environment. Inside that, the first step is to check out. Now the thing that is action. You could see here the name is I have written, you could give any name, like I have written check out the code. Now this is the uses actions slash checkout v3. What it means is, these are the predefined actions that are there in GitHub. Now what it means is, in GitHub there are various predefined actions in which helps you uh, to not which can be used, or which can be used to say prevent you from writing the similar code again and again. So that is why actions can be used. Now inside actions, you could see and also there are various actions that you could see in a GitHub marketplace. There are various predefined market actions, and you could make your own action as well. Now for example, this action is already predefined by GitHub. Now what it does is, it will check out your code, or it will check out your repository and check every file from it, and it gives the workflow the access to your repository and every file in it. So this is what this action means. Supposedly there are other actions that are predefined. Now once this repository is checked, now the uses in this, what it means is, now it is gonna, I have written the name check out the code. Now what is the first step? Now in the first step, what it is using is, it is using actions, and in the action it is using checkout at v3. Checkout at v3 is just the version of it. You could, there could be any amount of version. You could write v2, v3. So these are the different versions of the actions that are predefined. You could also make your own actions in the GitHub. Now after that, I have written the name of docker login. Now this is again using the predefined action. Now in the predefined actions, there is a predefined action by the name of login dash actions v2. Now what it does is, it will help you log into your docker, so that you don't have to enter your docker id and password again and again. Now it is using the username and password. Now you could write, now we have seen that we have stored our docker username and password in the secrets. So using secrets dot, this is by this name we have saved our username. So secrets dot docker username is by how you will save your fetch your username, and by this how will you, it will help you to fetch your password. Now These two things are fetched. Now this workflow will know that you have login into your Docker. Now once you build a Docker image, you don't have to let your workflow know that you have to log in again and again. If you wouldn't have done this, then you would have to provide your username and password on every Docker step, because otherwise the workflow will not be able to know that which Docker ID or which username that he wants to build the image on. So that is why actions are very helpful, so that it helps you reduce the usage of similar code again and again. Now after that, I've built a Docker image. Docker build is just the image name what I have built on. Now the the dash name is what you're seeing here. This is how you define a next step. So dash is what I have defined dash name. What it means is, it is just the uh, increment of the steps in your workflow. Now once you are completed with this step, you could go to this step and say dash space name and colon. Now what it will do is, it will create a new step, and under that step you could write your command. Now right now you are using the GitHub action, that is why you are using uses. Now you have to run a command, so now you will run. Now you will write run, and this is the command for Docker build image. Now once your image, and this is the, again, once your Docker image is built, this is this is the name of the image that I've given. This is the name of my Docker username. This is the name of the repository name, and this is the keyword to identify each image as a with a different unique identifier. What it does is, it is a GitHub inbuilt command. What it helps is github.sha. What it does is, it will give your Docker image or unique name on every CI/CD pipeline run. Once every CI/CD pipeline will run, it will give a unique name to your Docker image. Now this command will run your Docker, push your Docker image to your Docker Hub. Now once this, all these things we were doing in a dev environment. Now once you want that all the things that in my dev environment is being completed, now you want to your next, now you want to go to your next environment. So what you could do is, once you've done this, now you could see I have given the name as Docker image build and push. This was the uh, uh, job name in the first job that has to be done. Now the second job that has to be done was Terraform code and apply. Now I want all the things that I have written in my Terraform file to build. Now again I have to give a runner, and again I have to give the environment name, and again I have to give all the steps again. So the second job is now Terraform code apply. Now you could see I've given the name test. This is in my test, you could say this is in my test environment. So I have it will run on Ubuntu latest. I have given the runner name, then the environment is dev. Now these are the environment which you have saved it as. So you could see, you could go to environments, and you could see an environment, you have to give that name by which you have created the environment as. So I've created the environment as Docker, then I've created an environment as dev, so it will go to dev. Now after that, if you want your dev environment to run after the Docker environment, what it will do is, you could write needs Docker image and build. So once this job will get finished, then only this job, what it means is, it want this job to finish, and then only this job will start doing all the steps that has written in it. So that is the use of this need function. And after that, there are steps again. You could write as many steps as you want according to your uh, project or code. Now I want my project to set up AWS configurations and set up Terraform, and then run the code. Now what I will do is, I have written here uses actions checkout. What it will do is, the checkout action, what it was doing is, it was taking the letting the workflow know all the repositories, branches, folders in your repository. It is giving the access to all those things. Then this is a predefined action. Now second thing is, I want my AWS to uh, let workflow know that which AWS account it has to use. So again I am using a predefined action as AWS configure. What it is doing is it is configuring our AWS username, password, or AWS access key and secret key. Now it is taking again a predefined action that is given by GitHub. Now what it will do is it is taking our AWS access key, secret key and region. Now what it is doing is it is letting this workflow know that all the commands that you are running here has to be performed on this AWS account, that I don't have to enter it again and again. Then again, predefined action is used to install Terraform. Then once this is done, now I have to run the commands. Now right now I was using the uses keyword. Now everything inside our uh, GitHub action is uh, run using key value pair. This is the key that we are key value. This is the key that we are giving, and this is the value of it. So right now I'm using the key uses, and the value of it is predefined action. Now again, I have to run all the commands for my Terraform configuration to run. So firstly, I initiate the Terraform by using Terraform init. So I've given the name. The name thing is optional. If you want your step to give the name, you could give it, but then if you don't want, then you could just write dash run Terraform init dash run Terraform variable. This is how you could do it, or you could just give it via name. So firstly I've initiated Terraform, then I have Terraform validate will validate the code, Terraform plan will give you a structured plan, then Terraform apply auto approve. Auto approve means that you have already approved this Terraform configuration, and uh, it should automatically be resources should be made. Now I want this is just for my testing. So after everything is made, I want it to destroy. Now what it is doing is Terraform destroy. So if now there's this if keyword, what it is meaning is if you could either write here failure or you could write here success. Now I want my resources to get destroyed after it is being made every time, even if the even if there are some uh, errors that you are facing while making the resource, then also destroy the resources which are already made, or even if all the resources are made, then also destroy everything. So that is why I've written always. Now what it will do is it will perform a Terraform destroy command after all the resources are made. So now you could see here, now here you go to your actions. So once every time an event is triggered, what it means is every time a command or push pull request is given, then your CI/CD pipeline will run, and it will send your code first to the dev environment. Then inside the dev environment, firstly it will set up the job, it will check out the code, it will do the Docker login and all the things that you're given. After that, it will go to the test environment, and then it will perform all the steps that are written in the test environment, and then it will complete the job, and it will complete the pipeline, and then a tick like this will be shown to you once a pipeline is being completed. So every time you want any changes to be there in your AWS, so you could go to your code. So you could go to your code, you could make any changes, you could give a now right now I've given a push command to main. So every time you push into main, so it will just trigger the event, will trigger the workflow, and workflow will make the CI/CD pipeline do all the things or all the steps that are all the jobs that are written in the workflow. Now all these things are done. Now the one thing that has to be taken care of is environment that you're setting up. Now there are GitHub secrets and there are environmental secrets. Now these are the two differences. Now in your actions, you go to or you could in your secrets you go to actions. Now what it is doing is if you don't make any uh, environmental secrets, and in your workflow you are setting up environments. Now if your environment in your workflow you require your AWS setup, or you require a Docker to get login, then what it means is it will require a now there are two types of secret. Firstly, environmental secrets, repository secret. What it means is firstly, if you are running your workflow on environment, so it won't look for the it won't look for repository secrets, it will go for environmental secret that you have set up. So right now in my dev environment I am logging into my AWS account, so it will see the AWS secrets or the dev environment secrets. Now in my Docker environment I'm logging into my Docker, so it won't see the repository secrets, but it will see the Docker environmental secrets. So these are the things that you have to take care of. So if you are running your workflow under environment, so any secrets that you want, it has to be under environmental secrets. If you are not making any environments, then you need to make repository secrets if there are any. So yeah, this is all about the GitHub Actions and how the GitHub Actions take place. So also, once you commit a code, there are GitHub event handlers. What it does is, basically they have these event hooks, GitHub hook system, or the GitHub event handler, you could say. What they do is they keep on these are the behind the scenes how the event is triggered. So what it does is, GitHub event system will keep on checking if there is any event happening in your repository. So once you push the code, or once you give a pull merge or a pull request, what it will do is it will keep on checking, and it will take that information and give it to it will trigger the GitHub event handler. Now once the GitHub event handler is triggered, it will all the information that it will take is which code it is, what changes it is, from which repository, under which folder it is. All these things are being formatted in a structured manner for the GitHub to understand, and then it is being passed to the uh, your event or your workflow to do the next processes. So before going to the workflow, event handler takes all the information and send it to the workflow. So this is how a complete GitHub action or CI/CD pipeline works. So okay, so now let's just trigger our workflow pipeline and see how it is getting made. So this was the pipeline that we have made, and in that let's just edit something. Let's just take this and just give a space and edit it, and just commit all these things. Now once we'll commit, the event handler will check for the events that are triggered, and let's just testing commit, I'll say testing commit, or CI/CD pipeline flow. Now let's just commit it, and once I'll push it, the event handler will get triggered. It will check for the event that I have done and check for the changes. So see, I have just pushed everything, and just go to my GitHub and go to my actions. Now you could see, let's just refresh, you could see this pipeline is get triggered. Now the first thing it is doing is it is going to the dev environment, and in my dev environment you could click on here, and you could see there are different jobs, that different tasks or different steps that he is performing. Firstly, it is going to check out the code. In this, it is going to use the it is the syncing the repository, like the predefined action which we used is in that it is now syncing the repository which we are taking, and fetching everything from the repository and checking output and everything that is there in the repository. It is giving access to the workflow. Now the second thing that we have done is using the predefined action, we are logging into the Docker. Now we have entered the username password, and this action, what it is doing, it is helping us and logging into our Docker. Now you could see here login is successful. Now it is going to the next step. Now what is the next step is, it is building a Docker image. Now you could see here that our Docker image is being built. Terraform has been successfully initialized, and our Docker image is currently getting built. So right now you could see, you close this, and all these things are currently running into our dev environment. And you could go back, and you could see all the things that are there in the dev environment is being done, and then all the things in the test environment is being getting started. Now in my dev environment, you could see that I have made a Docker image, then I pushed it into the Docker hub, and then after everything is done, post Docker cleaning, what it is doing is, all the things that you have stored in your workflow, like your username, password that you have given access to, everything gets removed. So here is post job cleaner. What it will do is, the CI/CD pipeline will remove all the login ID passwords from your workflow, so that nobody can have access to those unless you trigger the pipeline again. So post docker login, what it means is all the things in your login id and password, all your login credential is being removed. Now this is removing login credentials, and then all the things inside those things that are stored in this workflow will completely be removed. Now this is being done, and you could see right now it is gone to our test environment. You could see in the test environment, uh, this was a test environment. So in this, firstly it gave access, repository access. You could see here, using this actions, it is giving us the repository access, which is like this was the repository name, and this was our GitHub username. Now it is giving us the repository access. Now it is setting, in the next step it is taking the AWS credentials using the predefined action. What is predefined action is, it will help us to, it will help the workflow know to that, this is the AWS account in which they have to make the resources. After this, Terraform is being set up, as we have written the command to set up Terraform and then initialize Terraform, and all the steps that we are making was done in that. Once, now it will gonna take some time to make all the resources and everything in our in our workflow. Now you could see once this is completed, you could see here, and you could go back and you could see here that this pipeline will automatically get stacked. And just like this, how this pipeline is completed, this pipeline will automatically gets completed. You could see here the time it took from the last pipeline to get completed is 15 minutes 56 seconds. Before that, it took 1 minute 23 seconds. And just like how you could even have the details about your pipeline. Now this pipeline is being done. You could click on this pipeline, and inside that you can have access to all the things that are there in the pipeline, or all the things, or all the flow that is of your project. Now right now I made two environments, one is dev, one is test. You could also make a prod environment in which you could send all the resources to deploy to your production, and like that. So you could see here right now that in progress is what it is right now. The pipeline is in progress right now. It is making all the resources that are there. And if you want to know all more details, you could just click on this test, and inside this you could see in this test environment what right now it is doing. Right now this pipeline is on which stage? It is on the last stage, that is Terraform destroy. Now we have, in the code we have entered that all, once all the resources has been applied, we want all the resources to get destroyed as well. So this is what it is, destroying everything. Now after this, there's this post AWS setup is all the credentials that we have stored in our pipeline or in using the GitHub action. It will automatically gets removed from the workflow, so that whenever you trigger the pipeline again, all the resources will again be fetched from the secrets. So this is the complete flow of your pipeline, and this is how you'll make a GitHub actions uh, CI/CD pipeline under different environment. If you don't want any environment, you could not make any environment. You could see a single flow of your things that are there. Now you, right now you could also make a prod environment, so it will come here. Once the resources are being tested, it can go to the prod environment for the production. And if there is any review thing, then there is a GitHub notification that will pop up to the reviewer, who will see that these are the changes that the particular person has made, and he wants to uh, deploy it on your prod environment. So you could review the, and you could accept it, and once you accept it, the pipeline will start from the, or the, that under that work environment, all the workflow that was written, it will get started. So this is all about GitHub actions.